The Midnight Child. A Snowfall's Whisper. New York City glittered under a blanket of fresh snow, its streets alive with anticipation for New Year's Eve. Skyscrapers shimmered with golden lights, and the hum of excitement filled the air as crowds gathered to watch the ball drop in Times Square. But not everyone felt the joy of the season. On the edge of the city, in an aging apartment building on the Lower East Side, a family prepared for a quiet evening. Lucy Martin, a curious and imaginative 12-year-old, stared out the frost-covered window at the snow-covered streets below. "Mom, who's that?" she asked, pointing to a girl standing alone beneath the streetlight. Her mother, Anna, glanced out the window but saw no one. "There's no one there, Lucy. You're imagining things." Lucy frowned. The girl was still there, her pale face turned upward, staring directly at Lucy. A city on edge. In the days leading up to New Year's Eve, rumors spread through the city. People spoke in hushed tones about a ghostly girl who appeared on snowy streets, staring into windows or standing silently at busy intersections. "She's always wearing the same thing," said one shopkeeper, describing a faded white dress and black boots. "She doesn't move, doesn't speak, just stares. Gives me chills." Local news outlets dismissed the sightings as urban legends, the kind that thrive in a city as restless as New York. But Detective Ryan Carter of the NYPD wasn't so sure. In his 12 years on the force, Ryan had seen his share of strange cases, but something about these reports unsettled him. People who claimed to have seen the girl often disappeared shortly afterward, leaving behind little more than footprints in the snow. Lucy's encounter. On December 30th, Lucy saw the girl again. This time, she was standing in the alley behind their building, her thin figure barely visible through the falling snow. "Mom, she's back," Lucy whispered. Anna sighed, barely looking up from her work. "It's probably just a neighbor's kid playing outside. Don't worry about it." But Lucy couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She pressed her face to the glass, watching as the girl raised a hand and pointed toward Lucy's window. A forgotten tragedy. Determined to learn more, Detective Carter dug into city archives, searching for any mention of a girl matching the description. His search led him to a forgotten story from the 1920s. In 1929, a massive fire had consumed an orphanage on the Lower East Side. 37 children perished in the blaze, including a girl named Evelyn Crane. According to witness accounts, Evelyn had tried to warn the others, but no one listened. Ryan's heart sank as he read the final line of the report. Some say her spirit still lingers, searching for someone to hear her warnings before it's too late. Lucy's dreams. That night, Lucy had a vivid dream. She was standing in the alley, snow falling softly around her. The girl in white was there, closer now. "Who are you?" Lucy asked, her voice trembling. The girl didn't answer. Instead, she reached out, her icy fingers brushing at Lucy's hand. Images flooded Lucy's mind: fire, screaming children, and a locked door. Lucy woke with a start, her chest heaving. On her nightstand was a single burnt feather. The shadows of the past. As New Year's Eve approached, more sightings of the girl were reported across the city. People described hearing faint whispers and feeling a sudden bone-deep chill when she was near. Detective Carter pieced together a theory. The girl, Evelyn, wasn't just an urban legend. She was trying to warn people about something. But what? A warning ignored. Lucy tried to tell her mother about the dream and the feather, but Anna brushed it off as a child's imagination. "It's just a story, Lucy. Don't let it scare you," Anna said. But Lucy knew it wasn't just a story. She felt the girl's presence everywhere, in the alley, on the stairs, even in her dreams. Midnight approaches. As the city prepared to ring in the new year, Lucy noticed something strange. The girl was no longer alone. Shadows, faint but growing stronger, followed her through the snow. At first, Lucy thought it was a trick of the light, but then she saw them move, slithering and shifting like smoke, circling Evelyn protectively. The detective's revelation. Detective Carter discovered a chilling connection between the orphanage fire and the present day. The land where the orphanage once stood had been sold to a developer who planned to demolish the remaining structure on New Year's Eve. Carter's gut told him the demolition was tied to Evelyn's reappearance. If her spirit was tied to the orphanage, destroying it could unleash something far worse. On New Year's Eve, Lucy had one last dream. She was back in the orphanage, walking through charred hallways filled with smoke. Evelyn stood at the end of the hall, pointing to a locked door. "They're coming," Evelyn whispered. Lucy woke to find her window frosted over, the words "Help me" scrawled in the ice. A race against time. Detective Carter raced to the demolition site, determined to stop it before midnight. Meanwhile, Lucy, driven by an unexplainable pull, sneaked out of her apartment and headed toward the same place. The demolition site. Lucy arrived at the demolition site just as the final preparations were underway. The skeletal remains of the old orphanage loomed in the moonlight, its broken windows and crumbling walls a stark reminder of its tragic past. The construction crew milled about, oblivious to the history beneath their boots. Lucy's breath fogged in the cold night air as she approached the fence surrounding the site. "Hey, kid, you're not supposed to be here," a worker called out. "I need to stop you." Lucy shouted, gripping the chain-link fence. Her voice trembled, but her determination cut through the frigid night air. The worker frowned, stepping closer. "Listen, kid, this is dangerous. Go home to your parents." "She's here," Lucy pleaded. "The girl from the fire, Evelyn. You can't tear this place down." The worker hesitated, startled by her words. But before he could respond, Detective Ryan Carter's car screeched to a halt nearby. He stepped out, his badge flashing in the dim light. "She's right," Carter said firmly. "You need to stop the demolition." The foreman of the crew approached, clearly annoyed. "Look, officer, we've got permits. This building's coming down at midnight." "Then you don't understand what's at stake," Carter said, his tone sharp. He gestured toward the remains of the building. "This place is more than just bricks and mortar. Something's buried here, something that doesn't want to be disturbed." Before the foreman could argue, a loud, chilling sound interrupted them. It was faint at first, like distant wind chimes, but it grew louder, echoing across the site. The workers froze, their eyes darting around nervously. "What is that?" one of them asked. Lucy knew the answer. It's her. The shadows awaken. The sound of the chiming bell gave way to whispers, soft, insistent, and growing in number. From the darkest corners of the site, shadows began to stir. They stretched and slithered like living smoke gathering around the skeleton of the orphanage. The workers backed away, fear etched across their faces. "What the hell is this?" the foreman demanded. "She's warning us," Lucy said, her voice steady despite the rising terror around her. "If you tear this place down, the shadows will take over." Carter stepped forward, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. "We need to find the source of this," he said to Lucy. "You said Evelyn's trying to show us something. What is it?" Lucy closed her eyes, searching for the images Evelyn had shown her in her dreams. "The basement," she whispered. "There's something in the basement." Descent into the orphanage. Against the foreman's protests, Carter and Lucy climbed over the fence and entered the ruined building. The air inside was thick with cold and an oppressive silence. Lucy led the way, her steps careful as she followed a path that seemed etched into her mind. "This way," she said, her voice barely audible. Carter scanned the debris with his flashlight. The walls were charred, and the floor was littered with broken furniture and forgotten relics. Then they found it, a rusted trapdoor hidden beneath a pile of rubble. "This is it," Lucy said, kneeling beside it. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the handle. Carter helped her clear the debris. The trapdoor groaned as it opened, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. "You stay here," Carter said, but Lucy shook her head. "She's guiding me," she insisted. With no time to argue, Carter allowed Lucy to follow. Together they descended into the cold, shadowy depths of the orphanage's forgotten basement. The heart of the haunting. The basement was a time capsule, untouched since the fire. Blackened walls bore the scars of flames, and the air was heavy with the scent of ash and rot. At the center of the room stood a stone altar, its surface etched with strange symbols. Candles, long burned out, surrounded the altar, and in its center lay a charred book, its pages brittle but intact. "This is where it happened," Lucy whispered. Carter approached the altar cautiously, his flashlight illuminating the book. The title on the cover read, "Rituals of Binding." Lucy gasped as Evelyn appeared before them, her ghostly form flickering in and out of view. She pointed to the book, her lips moving silently. "She's telling us to open it," Lucy said. Carter hesitated, but finally lifted the book, opening its fragile pages. Inside were instructions for a ritual to trap spirits, a ritual Evelyn's caretakers had performed to bind the orphanage's children to this place. "She's trapped here because of this," Carter said grimly. "They used her to contain the others." The shadows attack. As Carter read the book, the shadows surged into the basement, their forms writhing and coiling like snakes. The temperature plummeted, and the whispers turned into guttural roars. "They don't want us to free her," Lucy said, clutching Carter's arm. Carter scanned the book quickly. "The ritual can be undone, but we'll need to perform it right now." The shadows lashed out, knocking over debris and extinguishing Carter's flashlight. The room was plunged into darkness, broken only by the faint glow of Evelyn's presence. "Light the candles," Carter shouted. Lucy scrambled to relight the candles around the altar, using an old box of matches she'd found in the rubble. One by one, the flames flickered to life, pushing the shadows back. The ritual of release. With the candles lit, Carter began reciting the words from the book. The language was ancient, the syllables foreign and difficult to pronounce. Evelyn stood at the center of the altar, her form becoming more solid with each word Carter spoke. The shadows grew more desperate, their forms twisting and merging into a single massive entity that loomed over the room. Lucy stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "You can't have her anymore." The shadows roared, surging toward her, but Evelyn raised her hand. A burst of light erupted from her, forcing the darkness to retreat. Midnight's toll. As the clock struck midnight, Carter finished the ritual. Evelyn let out a soft sigh, her form glowing brightly before dissolving into the light. The shadows let out one final, agonized scream before disappearing into the walls. The oppressive cold lifted, replaced by a warmth that hadn't touched the orphanage in decades. "She's free," Lucy said softly, tears streaming down her face. Carter nodded, closing the book and placing it back on the altar. "It's over." A city at peace outside, the city celebrated the arrival of the new year, unaware of the battle that had just been fought beneath their streets. Lucy and Carter emerged from the orphanage, their faces pale but their spirits lifted. The foreman, seeing their expressions, quietly called off the demolition. Lucy's farewell. The next night, Lucy had one final dream. Evelyn appeared to her, no longer the pale, haunted figure she had been. She smiled warmly, her eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you," Evelyn said before fading into the light. Lucy woke with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in weeks. The first dawn. As the first sunrise of the new year bathed New York City in golden light, the orphanage stood quiet and undisturbed. Carter visited Lucy and her family, bringing news that the site would be preserved as a historical landmark. "We owe her that much," he said. Lucy smiled, knowing Evelyn was finally at peace. But as Carter walked away, a faint whisper carried on the wind, reminding them that some stories never truly end.